can point everything out after you. Might make it early.
I'd like to first say I'm Norman. I'm Ashley's dad, Dylan's grandfather.
Okay.
I'm Kathy, Jason's sister.
I'm Rob Hearn, I'm the deputy chief, and I see for most of the search.
Okay.
For this.
We met you the other day.
Yes,
And I'm Tom Fitzpatrick. I'm the plans chief of Colchester Ground Search and Rescue up the road.
Okay.
I'm Amy Hansen. I actually was the search manager for the search, except for when Halifax was on site.
I'm Dave McNeil, police chief. I've been all in last little while.
I'm Monty Emery, detective with the Truro Police Service. I'll be the lead investigator.
Inspector Smith, I look after the patrol section. So what we want to do this morning, we're going to turn it over to Ground Search and Rescue first for about 15 minutes. I'm going to give you guys an update on absolutely everything that was searched, every technique that they used, and kind of where we are today, on what they have to do in the next couple of days, some things that they want to try. And then we'll talk about where we're going to transition from the search to the missing persons file and through Monty's side of the house, right? So that's what we're hoping to accomplish this morning. Entertain any questions that you have, and we're here for you guys, so this is your time to get some answers. And we want to be as open as we can and share as much information as we can with you folks, right? And that's what Jason recording. So everyone knows that Jason's recording the session, just so you know. Not that it's going to impact what you say or whatever, but just be so you all know that. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Ground Search, folks. When we go.
Okay. So when we got the call, we came in, we set up. Our first priority, because one of the things we look at heavily when we're doing any type of a search is our lost person behavior statistics. Because there's statistics from around the world. And one of the first statistics I saw was that 50% of lost children in an urban area are found in structures. So when you saw us first land, before even our trailers got there, we started searching every structure, pretty much from Walker all the way down, and we made it actually all the way down to Eddie Group. Searched every structure along that road we could get into, and we actually even had the police call and get contacts and open up a couple of the yards that had closed since we got there, so we could actually go in and search because of the habits that we know a child of that age is going to exhibit, like hiding.
We also searched inside those businesses. They opened them up for us, office to office, every space that we could find, pipes, culverts,
Everything. It was extremely thorough. And from there, we did brooks, we did around the fields, we did all the brushy areas we could see, and we started doing some of the waterways leading out. And by the time that happened, it was pretty much ready to get into Halifax's operational period. It does take a while. So they came in, and actually, before I go that far, we did actually have thermal imaging cameras, so they're a camera that fire departments use to look for heat signatures in walls and stuff for structures. So we actually had 6 of those on site, again, to go through some of the brushy areas and stuff to get really thorough into like brush piles and stuff like that. Someplace where he might have crawled in hidden. That with a flashlight, a searcher just might not have seen, especially with the darker clothing and that. So we actually had all of these areas, all of this brush, all eliminated, all by thermal imaging camera as well the first night. So when Halifax came in the next morning and they took over, they redid most of this. They did hasty searching. They brought in drones. I know they did both of the rivers with the drone, and they had it over the main river. You guys saw they had the camera down in the waters and everything else. They brought in the dive team to do Upper Brook. They had, what else did they have there?
We still had the Swiftwater Rescue.
The Swiftwater
Well,
Rescue.
Wednesday when we first.
We started with them, but they were back helping with Halifax the next day.
Yeah.
So from that point, with the discussion that was had, the decision was kind of to switch gears. So for the next 3 days when we were there, so I just want to.
It was a Thursday night that we moved to changed phases from the search to
Thursday night.
recovery. On Friday morning, we had a DNR helicopter.
That's what I'm bringing up.
And we'd be showing it up there right now,
So
basically what we did.
when Friday morning we went up in the helicopter, we covered every nook, every cranny, and everything we could get. They're from right over the house. You're wondering, that's our command post. That's the residence, the LKP, the last known position is what we call. So in the helicopter, Rob was there, Tom and myself were both up in the helicopter as well with the pilot. We covered every nook and cranny all the way to the Great Village that we could with the helicopter that day as well. And then by 5 p.m. that night, we actually had search teams back on site, which is when we started doing our extensive riverbank search. So we had search teams for the next 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we covered every riverbank from the other side of the railroad bridge all the way down to 102. And then Sunday, we actually covered, by the way, it's not even on the
I'm
map.
sorry, did we miss Thursday?
No,
We
Thursday
went
was the
from
drones.
Wednesday to Friday.
Thursday was the drone,
The
Friday
drones,
was the
they
helicopters.
researched a lot of this area. They did the drones, they had their search teams in ground on foot. They had the dive team there. So they had a lot of the specialty resources there on Thursday.
I'll just comment, all 3 days the helicopter was here.
Yes.
So Wednesday afternoon, our response was, we arrived within minutes of the call initially. We reached out to our policing partners over across the river, the RCP, they deployed resources, and our K-9 team searched the area. We had Truro Fire out on the river, watching the river, caught it with fire and relieved them, and they stayed there till dark, watching the river.
We rolled in at around 4
Yeah.
o'clock that day.
That was outside at 4 to 4.
A non-intrusive message went out through social media advising of the lost child in the area. And once that went out, you could see a lot of town residents, everybody was in that area looking for the child, so. Yeah, all 3 days, the helicopter, was there. Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, and about 5 hours of flight time Friday.
And that was what that, well, that was the track from Fridays.
It was down Maitland Way.
That was
What-
Friday,
Yeah,
Friday,
yeah,
yeah.
Yes,
The pilot was
yes, I know, I
fantastic.
followed it.
The pilot was fantastic. In some cases, we were that low that we could have separated out of the helicopter
Right.
onto an area.
And if there had been a need to, we would have.
Yes. Yeah.
He would have landed so we could get out to look if we had the cause to actually go and investigate something further.
And we actually responded to a few radio calls of things spotted too as well with the
Yeah.
helicopter, checked them all out and that
Yeah.
stuff. We searched high and low.
So, and again, we did the riverbanks. We also had observation points set up every day when the tide came in to watch the waters and that, make sure there was nothing in the water. And then yesterday, we probably heard we were back at Leper Brook looking in the water hole again. And then we actually had, because one of the areas we weren't completely satisfied with was the area behind Stanfield's because it's fenced. So the teams, and it's very steep, the teams were having troubles getting in there. We actually had Truro Fire walk that entire thing in the water yesterday with pipe poles checking. So that entire area was completely covered off again yesterday.
Any questions?
Yeah, many questions I'm probably never have answers for.
And we feel the same way.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure you do.
So just to give you an overall idea, we had a total of 119 taskings out. And this is gonna look like a whole bunch of squiggly lines when it loads, slowly. So that is the tracks from the search teams that were out looking.
So each team has a GPS and it's all recorded where they look? That's what that is.
So even if we just come over here and zoom in.
May I ask why wouldn't you guys start at the point he was missing at the river, and then why wasn't it moved out closer to the bay and worked their way in right away?
We did do that actually.
Okay.
We did do that on the ground first. Helicopter, and that's how the essential, or the organization works together and that stuff. We actually did exactly that. That's why that LKP, that's our last known position, that's exactly where we work from outwards. And we do
We work outwards, so there's areas right around that we have to cover first. But then, as soon as we finish with this area, the next teams that went to the 102 to start working their way back.
Okay.
So that it's the method, like the percentage. So just from this, the distance traveled 75% of all the children lost in this category are found within 800 meters of the house, of the last known position. So that's why we focus so closely in, because that's the highest probability area. So that's the best chance we have. But as soon as we covered that area, we were out all the way to the 102 working our way, and then the helicopter had already been flying that, even from day one.
Excuse me, in that equation that you just mentioned, about 75%,
Yeah.
does that include if indeed he went in the water and the speed of the...
That's overall. The find location breaks it down to whether they're found in structures or on roads or in waterways. So when I look for an urban area, 3% are found in water. My big concern was that 56, because children of that range are known for hiding. That was my first biggest concern, was to get those structures done first. And then the next thing we went to was the waterways.
Danger areas, we started right away.
I'm sorry, the what?
But we,
Danger areas, as we call them, like hot red areas that we classify them as, where there's a danger to the child, and that's our next priority.
within the first hour of us on site, there was a fire department sitting down where the old Palliser Hotel Wilcoff was, watching the water.
Yeah, and
They were there.
Before they were on site, I was in the helicopter, right? Flying that river before these guys got there. So once we reached out to Shuby, the helicopter was here fairly quick, and we jumped in and took a look.
So, I mean, there's absolutely no sign of him being in the water,
Other
other than...
That somebody could have thrown in.
Boots.
Absolutely.
Which is up to...
So why wasn't an
Yeah,
Amber Alert?
we're-
Like, they should make a new law, like Dylan's law, where anyone under 10, that Amber Alert really should go out just in case, because it's a possibility. I mean, it's a rare occasion, but this is a rare occasion.
So I'll talk on the ambulance right quick. So I did call the province right away, about 2 o'clock or so on Wednesday, told them what we had on the go, and they then advised that right off the jump, we didn't have any real evidence to suggest abduction or foul play right off the jump. So that isn't going to trigger the Amber Alert. But what they said they would do is put out a non-intrusive alert. So when instead of going to everybody's cell phones, it goes out to all the media platforms and then all the government social media. That's about the best they could do on the Amber Alert, right? Now, if we had somebody say, yeah, there was a suspicious vehicle there just minutes before he was gone, then it would have been an Amber Alert scenario. But unfortunately, we didn't have that, right?
There was a suspicious guy with a duffel bag.
Yeah, we checked that out. So it was his laundry, right? So, but there was nothing there to trigger the Amber Alert at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But what you didn't see us do is we focus on the search, because that's the most obvious.
Yes.
But right from the jump, we've been doing, I'm not going to say a criminal investigation, but a missing persons investigation. So our detective section, they're not there searching physically. They were there originally to help right away so we could flood the area, but they've been doing some background stuff, right? And that's the stuff the public doesn't see. So we're not putting all our
That's not
eggs...
something that we even heard about.
Right, but that's not, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. So they've been looking at video, going and collecting video at different businesses, canvassing areas, doing all that stuff, and that still hasn't really yielded anything to suspect foul play at this point in time, right? We brought in family members, we've interviewed folks, get some information from you guys. That work needs to continue now because we're transitioning from a search and recovery to now a missing persons, active missing persons file, right? So those are the things that we've been doing behind the scenes that will continue to go now, because these guys have put in the time and the effort. You've seen how extensive the search has been.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a whole lot left on that front for us to do. They do have a couple of things they want to try this week, and they'll get to that in a minute to let you know what that is. But our efforts now are going to focus solely on the missing persons file. We've been focusing on both. The majority has been on the search because we want to find Dylan.
Oh, yeah.
This is now the reality where we're at. I don't know what else physically these folks can do on the search front, so now we've got to ramp up our missing persons file a little bit more, right? So not to say we haven't been doing both, because we have, but we've exhausted this side, unfortunately, right at this point in time. So now we need to continue on with the missing persons piece and a couple of little tricks that they have that they want to try.
Okay.
So I don't know if that addresses that piece, but that's where we're at, right? So we have been doing those things just behind the scenes, right?
Okay, so let's fill you in what we're looking at. We've done this, we've searched. Our teams are very involved in this right now, so we're trying to think outside the box. And like you guys, we have a question. Well, if he was in the water, where'd he go? So we've got a little trick we're gonna try. Never been done before, but we're gonna try it. We're getting a mannequin made, simulating size and that stuff. We're gonna dress it as close to the clothing as we can get. We're gonna release it in the creek. We're putting an RF, radio frequency tracker on it. We're gonna station antennas all the way along the river as far as we can. And we're gonna track it and see if that's gonna answer some questions for us.
Okay.
So they're gonna wait until the tide conditions are similar to they were last Wednesday, and they're gonna try to simulate the environmental conditions the best they can without being exact, right? So that's why they're not jumping out and doing it today, because that tidal condition is not quite what they need it to be. So they're hoping, maybe.
Exactly, and we're hoping we're gonna get it in tomorrow, and we're hoping to do it 3 times. That way we can use all the variables into it. Hopefully that's gonna answer some questions for you folks as well as for us, and that stuff as well.
Okay.
It's outside the box, everybody thinks, you know.
So we've reached out to Bedford Institute of Oceanography down in Dartmouth, down in Bedford, and we also reached out to DFO in Newfoundland they do these modeling for charge, so if you had size, weight, all that kind of thing. The big factor here is the tidal water, right? That's the dynamic that other places don't have. So their modeling, their calculations couldn't really pinpoint a potential area to look out in the bay.
They kind of told us the modeling they do is more for open ocean, like for open water, but that tidal bore, like Rob said, it's such an anomaly, you don't have it anywhere else really in the world.
One thing in the world, yes.
So it makes it a little bit more difficult for the modeling to be accurate, but we're still doing that, right?
So we flew that Friday. It was like, the water was just gone. At 4 o'clock, it's pretty level with the dike. You know, that's the change in the water. That's there.
And unfortunately, the night he went missing was a full moon. So the tidal bore was at its max. You could hear it roaring down the river. We were out there 11 o'clock at night, and it was about a 2.5 foot high wall of water that came down that river. So the enforcement side of it.
The other avenue we're looking at maybe getting a camera in a few of the deep spots. We're trying to get with the current and everything, we're trying to see if we can see.
Do you think it's a possibility still hung up under the water? You've had divers and cameras and...
There's spots that the divers do go.
And the water wasn't that high at that moment in time, so it's just
The water was
crazy.
actually quite high. The tidal bore wasn't. The tidal bore came in, can't remember the exact time. But Tom was there the first night down by the river, the Leper Brook, and the water was considerably higher even than it was 2 days later.
Wednesday night, Tom and I were both there, and the Truro fire guys were in the water, most of them my height, and they were up to their chest in that brook, right? And in certain spots in that brook, right? Because the brook kind of runs, and it has some low spots, and I'm telling you, like, those guys were up to their, like, it was all they could do to stand up in it. It was running that high, and they were up to their chests, right?
The current was very strong.
It was, and high. Yeah.
Now, it's not like that today because the water flow to that creek's been cut off.
So the town has up the water treatment facility up at the top of Young Street. This Leper Brook runs all the way up through Victoria Park and all the way through, right? So yesterday afternoon, the engineer put a stopper in the brook way up by the water treatment plant. He kind of opened the stopper so it kind of slows the water flow down to the brook. So that was for yesterday. We put that in place so we could use the underwater camera and really took the water down. It's probably ankle height. So anyway, we were able to get that underwater camera into some spots that were inaccessible because of the height of the water. So he's got that. We're going to keep that stopper in place overnight tonight. And then if they go to do their experiment Wednesday afternoon, late in the afternoon, he's going to open that stopper up, and it should force a whole bunch of water in that brook and try to raise the height again to stimulate the conditions that were last Wednesday. So that's what we're working on. There's a whole lot of things going on that are outside of the scope of normal search stuff, right? So we're not leaving anything unturned.
No, and it's just all a matter of trying to get the timings right, get all the resources in the right spots at the right time to do that.
Yeah.
And our teams are there. If we find anything, we'll be back looking.
They're sitting there with their phones in their hands waiting to be called back.
So what makes you so, and with all due respect, what makes you so positive he's still in this vicinity, this area, if indeed he was in the water? Like, could he have not just I mean, we're talking like
It's,
shortly after 1 in
it's
the
not so much
afternoon.
that's the assumption. The point is this, we're searching an area that we're capable of searching. We can't search the entire bay, unfortunately. It's just, for resource and stuff, it's just impossible, like, unfortunately, as much as we want to.
And some of those, in the brook where we found the first boot, I mean, there's a lot of erosion in that brook because the water pressure and stuff over here, and there's all these areas underneath the ground that, like, so if this is the ground, underneath is all hollow from the water rushing in there. And when we found that first boot, like, there was a grocery cart, like a full-size grocery cart in the water that they had to pull out, like, that's how deep that cavern was, right? It was a grocery cart in there they pulled out, and that's where the first boot was located, right? So there's a few of those types of spots. Now, we searched it with an underwater camera, and the divers did the best they could searching it, right? They were in there looking around, but it's still deep, it's hard to see. So even yesterday when the water was low, we put that underwater camera back in there, right? So the flow of that brook coming down, you know, is it possible lodged in there somewhere? Who knows, but we want to make sure we know for sure, right? Because that's where it's found, right? We haven't found any other article of clothing in that water other than clothes, right? So is it possible? We want to make sure we know for sure, so we can rule out and say, hey, you know, he's not under there anywhere, right? That's kind of where we're at with that. So we spent a lot of resources in that area because it's close to the last known location that he was seen, and we found evidence to suggest that he could have been in that body of water, and the way that brook is, there are some hollows, right? There are some spots. So we just want to make sure we absolutely rule all that out. Amy's statistic as well says most lost children that size and age are typically found very close to the home, right? So that's why we're really
What does
there.
the other 25%
You know.
say?
Well,
That's why we looked all over the other places,
Yeah.
right?
well, 56%, just to read you the stats, 50% are found in, 56 is structure, 12 is road, 7 is linear, so trails or, you know, a deer trail or something like that. 4% is drainage, 3% are in water, 3% are in scrub, 8 in woods and 8 in field. So it gives you a breakdown according to different areas that could be found.
That document is an evidence-based document based on cases and that stuff, and actually in Canada, Nova Scotia.
Some of those, in the brook where we found the first boot, I mean, there's a lot of erosion in that brook because of the water pressure and stuff over here, and there's all these areas underneath the ground that, like, so if this is the ground, the first boot is located, right? So there's a few of those types of spots. Now, we searched it with an underwater camera, and the divers did the best they could searching it, right? They were in there looking around, but it's still deep, it's hard to see. So even yesterday when the water was low, we put that underwater camera back in spots, and we searched it with an underwater camera, and the divers did the best they could searching it, right? They were in there. Is it possible? But it's still deep, it's hard to see. So even yesterday when the water was low, right? Because that's where the water camera back in there. We haven't found any other article of clothing in that water than coming down, right? So is it possible? We want to make sure we're lodged in there so we can rule out and say, hey, you want to be not under, right? Because that's where, right? That's kind of where we haven't found any other article. We spent a lot of resources in that area because, so is it possible? We want to make sure we're seen, and we found evidence to suggest that he could have been there, right? That's kind of where we're at. So we spent a lot of resources in that area because we want to make sure we have the location that he was seen, and we found as well evidence to suggest that he could have age in that water, found very close to home. And the way that's why we're really, there are some homes, right? There are some spots. So we just want to make sure we absolutely, that's why we looked all over the other Amy's statistic as well, says most lost children that
56%,
size
just to
and
read you
age
the stats,
are typically
50%
found very close
are
to
found in,
home.
56 is structure,
That's why we're
12 is
The
road,
other 25%
7 is
say?
linear, so trails
Well,
or
that's why we looked all
a deer
over
trail
the
or something like
other
that. 4% is drainage, just to read you the stats, 50% are found in, 56 is structure, 12 is road, 7 is linear, so it gives you a breakdown according to different areas. A deer trail or something like that.
That document is an
4% is drainage,
evidence-based document
3%
based
are in
on
water,
cases and that stuff.
3% are in
In
scrub,
Canada, Nova
8
Scotia
woods and
is
8
a place contributor to.
So it gives you a breakdown according to different areas that could be found.
That document is an evidence-based document based on
So where
cases
exactly
and
were
that
the
stuff.
boots
And actually, in Canada,
Yeah, I'd like to
Nova
know that.
Scotia is a place contributor to.
So the brook brook is over
So
here.
where exactly were the boats
It's right
found?
here.
Okay, right there. So the deep hole is right here. So that's where basically the first group was found. There's Elizabeth Street's there, that's where the first group was found.
At the end of the road?
No, the brook is over.
That yellow spot is the house, right?
It's the yellow spot is right there. So it's in around here, right here. So that's before it kind of basically the first group was found. There's Elizabeth Street's there, that's where the, and then the other.
At the end of the road?
No,
That yellow spot is the house, right? One of
the
the
yellow
boats is
spot
found
is
up
up
behind
So he's
the
in around
house.
here, right? Not before it kind of curves around. So in the brook there, down. And then the other, the last house there on Elizabeth Street, number 16, they got like a garbage, like
One of the
burner back
boats is
there.
found up
Just
behind
to the right
the
out.
house.
No, not quite, and around when you get around the bend, in the same river, down just by the rail. You know, the last house there on Elizabeth Street, number 16.
I don't understand how you made it through all that.
Like the burner back
That
there.
was it, he could
Just
right
to
down
the
the
right
road
out.
there.
And around when you get, make the bend, you get into the same river, just by the rail. Right in there.
My team actually was
I don't
in there.
understand how you made it through all that.
That was it, he could right down the road there.
The day water was, that water was really flowing. The firefighters got in there, they did the mine, and my team actually was in there, going, walking that.
So whereabouts
We checked.
Did your dog
The water
trail him to, would have been down where the, roughly where that first
Yeah,
boat was
so
found?
we didn't have an actual canine track from the hooks to there.
So whereabouts
But
did,
there was some
did your dog
non-activity down in this area and
trail him to?
there were some
Would have been down
indication
where that,
that
roughly
there
where
was a
that
guy
first
there
boat
that
was
had,
found?
so we didn't have an actual canine track. Yeah, he was a canine guy. But
Oh, yeah, I know the guy
there
who
was some
has a
non-activity
dog.
down in this area.
He's a friend of
and
mine, and he's,
There were some
and he
indication that
told me the dog
there
was
was
in
a
the
guy
same
there that had
place.
a dog, and I don't know what.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
yes.
was also a canine.
Oh, yeah, I know the guy who has a dog. He's a friend of mine, and he's good with dogs, and he told me the dog went to the same
You want to
place
track a
twice.
single person.
Yeah.
And there's all distraction.
Yes.
There's also a lot of other people around there.
Yeah.
So, in this case, once he did his search, he also did, search for, so any, you want to track a single person off, and any of this distraction, just like I said, we're not tracking the same person. So his search, so we'll indicate, and in this case, once he did his search, he also did a, search for anyone same. So take the harness off, and then he.
Yeah, just not one once now.
Just like I said,
Which was some of our challenges right off the bat because of the number of folks that were in.
A lot of people wanted to help, right? So there were people, when we were down there were people roaming around through the
Yeah,
woods
just not
and the
one
tracks
once
and
now.
through the trails.
Which was some of our challenges right off the bat
Because they couldn't
number of
destroy
folks that
evidence.
were in.
A lot of people wanted to help, right? So there were people, when we were down
Why
there,
were
there
they letting people search them
roaming
when
around
the
through
officers
woods,
weren't
through the
stopping
tracks
them?
and through the trails. Making it would be difficult for these guys. When I was in that river, there were people coming from on the hillside, up over the riverbank, up over the train tracks. They were
Hundreds and hundreds of people.
Well, why were they letting people search them when the officers weren't stopping
From
them?
the Salmon River.
Right on, there were people, when I was in that river, there were people coming from on the hillside, up over the riverbank, up over the train tracks. There were people, right?
We were trying to get them out of it because we were.
It's true. Oh, yeah, it's literally, it would be impossible.